Arthur was 68 years old, working at a gas station cashier. Every day, young customers would mock him, saying, "Why are you working at this age, old man?" Even his boss would scold him, saying, "Just retire already." But that night, when armed robbers hit the gas station, Arthur's action shocked everyone, because nobody knew he had been a SWAT officer for 25 years. Welcome to Honor Stories. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us keep these stories alive. The gas station stood in one of the city's suburban neighborhoods, right beside the main road. It wasn't large, but it was busy. It was an ordinary place where long-haul truckers stopped late at night and morning commuters grabbed coffee. But the story of Arthur Thompson, who worked there, was anything but ordinary. Arthur was 68 years old, gray-haired, with slightly stooped shoulders. He worked the night shift every night from 10:30 until 6 in the morning. His blue uniform was a bit loose on him, and deep lines marked his face. When he moved, a slight limp from his left knee was noticeable, the trace of an old injury. 2 years had passed since Arthur started working at this job. After retiring, staying home had become heavy for him. Life had become even more meaningless after losing his wife Margaret 5 years ago, so he had decided to look for a part-time job. Mike Henderson, the gas station owner, was a man in his 40s, somewhat overweight and quite impatient. He had hesitated when hiring Arthur, but couldn't find anyone else for the night shift. "Look, Arthur," Mike had said on his first day, "this job is tough. You'll deal with customers, handle the register, do cleaning. Your age is advanced, but if you can handle it, welcome." Arthur had only nodded then. "No problem, Mike. I've seen tougher jobs than this," he had said. But Mike hadn't taken this seriously. He didn't know Arthur's background. Nobody knew. The first months had passed relatively quietly. Arthur had learned his job, treated customers politely, never caused any complaints. But over time, things began to change. The young employees working the day shift at the gas station had started looking at Arthur differently, especially 24-year-old Brad Wilson and 26-year-old Kyle Martinez had targeted Arthur. "Why is this man working at this age?" Kyle had whispered one day. "Probably his retirement pension isn't enough," Brad had replied, laughing, "or he's too boring to stay home." Such conversations reached Arthur's ears, but he said nothing. He just did his job and went home. Customers also gradually began treating Arthur disrespectfully, especially young customers who came late at night, mocked him. One night, 2 young men in their 20s came. They had bought beer and were smiling at Arthur as they approached the register. "Old man, why are you working at this age?" one of them had asked. "I need the money," Arthur had said calmly. "Didn't you retire? How old are you?" The other had continued. 68, Arthur had said. Both had laughed. "Wow, night shift at this age. Isn't it a shame for your family?" Arthur hadn't answered. He had just taken their money and handed them the receipt. Such incidents had begun to increase. Disrespect toward Arthur had now become normal. Mike Henderson wasn't satisfied with Arthur either. Customers had started complaining because they found him old. "Arthur," Mike had said one day, "customers are complaining. They find you old, say you don't inspire confidence." "I do my job correctly, Mike," Arthur had said. "There's never been any money shortage. I've never made mistakes." "I know, but appearance matters in this business. Maybe it's time to retire," Mike had said. After this conversation, Arthur had become even more upset, but he needed his job, not just for money, but to have purpose in his life. A month later, Mike had become even harsher. "Arthur, let's talk frankly," Mike had said one evening. "This job is too hard for you. Customers aren't happy, and I'm not happy either. Retire. Rest now." "Why?" Arthur had asked. "What did I do wrong?" "Your age is advanced. You don't have the physical capacity for these tasks anymore. I'll find someone young for your position," Mike had said. Arthur had been very upset going home that night, but he wouldn't give up. It didn't take long for things to get even worse. Brad and Kyle were now openly mocking Arthur. "Grandpa Arthur," Brad had called out one day, "why don't you retire at this age?" "Isn't your retirement pension enough?" Kyle had added. "Or did you never get any pension? What job did you do before?" Brad had continued. Arthur had only answered various jobs. "Various jobs," Kyle had repeated, laughing. "You probably never managed to do any proper job." Arthur tried to endure such insults, but it wasn't easy. Customers were also becoming increasingly disrespectful. Some ignored Arthur, others mocked him. "Having to work at this age is very sad," one customer had said to his friend, loud enough for Arthur to hear. "He probably never saved anything in his life," the other had replied. Arthur heard these but remained silent. Another night, drunk customers had come. "Old man, give us beer," one had said. "Could you show ID?" Arthur had asked. "What ID? How old are you?" the drunk had shouted. "By law, I need to check ID," Arthur had said calmly. "Get lost, old man. What do you understand about ID checks at this age?" the customer had cursed. Arthur had felt very tired going home that night, not just physically but mentally too. Mike's impatience was also increasing. "Arthur, customer complaints are rising," Mike had said. "You're no longer suitable for this job." "What complaints?" Arthur had asked. "Your age, your slowness, your inability to get along with customers," Mike had said. "I treat everyone politely," Arthur had said, "but they don't want to see you. Find yourself another job," Mike had said harshly. Arthur had been especially upset that night. At 68, he was experiencing the fear of unemployment, but the real incident happened that cold November night. Arthur had started his night shift, as usual. It was around midnight. There were very few customers. Arthur was sitting at the register, reading a newspaper. Wind was blowing outside. It was cold. Arthur's old knee injury was aching from the cold, but he wasn't complaining. At 1 a.m, a black car entered the parking lot. Arthur noticed but didn't pay much attention. Night customers came anyway. 2 people got out of the car. Both were wearing dark hooded sweatshirts. Their faces weren't visible. Arthur found it a bit strange, but he saw all kinds of customers at these hours. The 2 men entered the store. Arthur said, "Good evening," but got no response. The men started walking around inside the store. A few minutes later, they approached the register. Arthur prepared to help, but at that moment, everything changed. One of the 2 men put his hand inside his jacket and pulled out a gun. The other did the same. "Hands up!" the first man shouted. "This is a robbery!" Arthur's heart rate increased, but his body language didn't change. These were the reflexes of someone who had been trained for years. "Open the register!" the second man shouted. "Now!" Okay, Arthur said calmly. "Stay calm." But Arthur's mind was working rapidly. 2 armed robbers, probably using cocaine or heroin, hands shaking, inexperienced, bad positioning, backs to the door. "Hurry up, old man," the first robber shouted. "Give us all the money." Arthur started opening the register, but at the same time, he was assessing his surroundings. Security camera present, alarm button by his foot, fire extinguisher behind the counter. "You're too calm, old man," the second robber said suspiciously. "Why aren't you scared?" "I'm old," Arthur said. "I'm not afraid of death anymore." This answer surprised the robbers. Arthur continued taking money from the register but was preparing his plan. "Hurry up," the first robber shouted. Arthur moved into action at that moment. 25 years of SWAT experience suddenly returned. Muscle memory kicked in. Arthur suddenly ducked and pressed the alarm button. At the same time, he dropped behind the counter. The robbers were surprised. "What are you doing?" they shouted. Arthur grabbed the fire extinguisher and stood up. He threw it at the first robber. The extinguisher hit the robber's head. The man fell down. The second robber pointed his gun at Arthur, but Arthur was faster. He jumped over the counter and attacked the robber. Classic SWAT technique: low hip, strong control. He knocked the gun from the robber's hand. The man fell down. Arthur pressed the robber to the ground and twisted his arm behind his back. Perfect arrest position. "Don't move," Arthur said, his voice now a commander's voice. "If you move, I'll break your arm." Everything was over within 2 minutes. The first robber was still lying on the ground. The second was under Arthur's control. Siren sounds were approaching. The alarm had worked. When police arrived, they were surprised to see the scene. 68-year-old Arthur had neutralized 2 armed robbers. "What happened here?" the police officer asked. "Armed robbery attempt," Arthur said calmly. "I neutralized both of them." Police officer Dave Rodriguez would never forget this scene. "Sir, could you tell us who you are?" Rodriguez asked. "Arthur Thompson," Arthur said. "I work at this gas station." "But how did you do this?" Arthur hesitated. Then he answered, "I used to be a police officer." "Police?" Rodriguez was surprised. "SWAT team, 25 years, Arthur said. Rodriguez's mouth fell open. Meanwhile, Mike Henderson came to the gas station. The alarm sound had woken him up. When he saw the scene, he was shocked. "Arthur, what happened?" "Robbery attempt," the police officer said. "Mr. Thompson neutralized 2 robbers single-handedly." Mike couldn't believe it. "Arthur? This isn't possible." "Very possible," Rodriguez said. "Mr. Thompson is a former SWAT officer." Mike's facial expression changed, a mixture of surprise, amazement, and shame. "SWAT officer?" Mike asked. 25 years, Arthur said modestly. But why didn't you ever say?" "You didn't ask," Arthur said. An ambulance had also come to the scene. The first robber had suffered minor head trauma. The second was just in shock. "Mr. Thompson," the paramedic said, "were you injured?" "No," Arthur said. "I'm fine." Rodriguez wanted to talk privately with Arthur. "Colonel Thompson," Rodriguez said respectfully. "Just Arthur," Arthur said. "I'm retired." "How long were you in SWAT?" "From 1975 to 2000, 25 years. "Wow, were you in major operations?" "A few," Arthur said modestly. Rodriguez knew he would research Arthur's background. This man was probably a legend. Mike was still in shock. "Arthur," Mike said, I'm very sorry. I was trying to fire you." "I know," Arthur said, "but why didn't you ever say? If I had known you were a SWAT officer—" "Would it have mattered?" Arthur asked. "I'm the same person, just old." Mike bowed his head in shame. Meanwhile, Brad and Kyle had also arrived. They had come after hearing the alarm. When they saw the scene, they were shocked. "What happened?" Brad asked. "Arthur caught 2 armed robbers single-handedly," Mike said. "Arthur?" Kyle couldn't believe it. "He was a SWAT officer," Mike said. 25 years. Brad and Kyle looked at each other. Shame could be read on their faces. "Grandpa Arthur," Brad started, then stopped. "I mean, Mr. Thompson ... "Arthur is fine," Arthur said kindly. "We didn't know," Kyle said. "We apologize." Arthur shrugged. "No problem, you didn't know either." The police investigation continued until morning. Arthur gave his statement. Security camera footage was examined. Police Chief Maria Gonzalez came to the gas station. "Mr. Thompson," Gonzalez said, "I've been police chief in this city for 15 years. I haven't seen an operation like yours." "Thank you," Arthur said. "I reviewed your file. You have an amazing career. Why did you never mention it?" "I'm retired," Arthur said. "The past should stay in the past." "But people should know you're a hero." Arthur felt uncomfortable. "I just did my job." By morning, the incident was on local news. 68-year-old former SWAT officer protects gas station from robbers. When Arthur got home, his phone was ringing. Former colleagues were calling. "Arthur," said his former partner Jim Walker, "I saw it on the news. You're still the same Arthur." "Jim, how are you?" Arthur said, smiling. "How are you, more importantly?" "Is the news true?" "True," Arthur said. "Why are you working at a gas station? Isn't your retirement pension enough?" "Staying home is boring," Arthur said. "I want to stay busy with something." "But a gas station—" "Work is work, Jim. Working honorably is important." That evening, when Arthur went to work, everything had changed. Mike met him at the door. "Arthur," Mike said, "first, I want to apologize. As long as you're here, this place is safe." "Thank you, Mike." "And I'm giving you a raise." "Pačas předešet." Arthur was surprised. "Not necessary." "Very necessary," Mike said. "You're the security chief of this place now." Brad and Kyle also came. "Mr. Thompson," Brad said formally, "what you did last night was incredible." "And we were very disrespectful to you," Kyle said. "We deeply apologize." "No problem, boys," Arthur said. "You didn't know either." "But whether we knew or not, we should have shown respect to elders," Brad said. "This was a lesson for us," Kyle said. From that night on, customers also began behaving differently. Customers who heard the news came to see Arthur. "Are you that hero cop?" a customer asked. "I just did my job," Arthur said. "But at 68, incredible." Arthur's life had completely changed. He no longer faced disrespect, but received praise instead. But for Arthur, the most important change was feeling valuable again. A month later, Police Chief Gonzalez came again. "Arthur," Gonzalez said, "I have an offer for you." "I'm listening." "Would you like to be a part-time police consultant to train young officers?" Arthur thought. "I accept." "Excellent. Starting 2 days a week." Arthur's new life began this way: 3 days a week at the gas station, 2 days in police training. Young officers learned a lot from him. "What's the most important rule?" Young officer Jenny Martinez had asked. "Stay calm," Arthur had said. "A panicking officer is a dangerous officer." "But what do we do when we're scared?" "Fear is normal," Arthur had said. "You'll learn to control fear." Arthur Thompson had changed not only his life after that night, but also the lives of people around him. Mike now looked at elderly employees differently. Brad and Kyle had learned to show respect to elders. Most importantly, Arthur felt valuable again. Now I ask you, have you ever learned that someone you judged by their apparent inexperience was actually incredibly experienced? Share that moment in the comments. Subscribe to Honor Stories because we need to hear stories that show real value lies not in age, but in character. See you in the next story. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are the most ordinary-looking people.